Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for coming back in. This is part 2 of the engine rebuild. This video, we're going to start putting the motor back together and prepping it for paint. So jumping back in it, what I first started out with is I put the camshaft in. I didn't record it for some reason, but I made sure I put enough assembly lube on there, so there should be no problems. This one happens to have a retainer on the front. This is an 87 block, so that's probably why. So here you see me, I'm pulling out all the old bearings. You just pop them out. They are keyed so they can only go in one way, so you can't really mess them up. So here you can see I'm dumping on the assembly lube, throw the crank on there. Now we got to work on the caps, and we'll get those lubed up, new bearings up, and we'll get them torqued down. It's super easy to slide them old bearings out and pop the new ones in. They slide right in, and they're grooved too, or keyed, or whatever you want to call it. Just make sure whatever way you took the cap off of that connecting rod, you put it back on the same way, because there is a front and a back to that connecting rod. They're not, you can't just flip them around. Just keep that in mind. So looking back at the piston, here we can see that it has a notch in it. So that notch is always going to face forward of the car. But then on the connecting rod, there's also some telltale signs. As I was talking about before, you can't flip it around. But if you see these two little grooves, they always face away from each other. So if these are 1 and 2, they're going to face away, those grooves. They're going to be on the outside. And then if you look real close on this edge, just past the bearing, it's got a big bevel, and then this one has a little bevel. And if you do put the thing on backwards, you can tell that it's on backwards. Fairly easy, I guess. But again, notch towards the front, and those like lips or whatever are gonna go away from each other. So when it comes to the piston rings, you can see that it's labeled pretty good. There's a top, a bottom, and then a middle groove. And there's a little bit of telltale signs so that you don't mess these up, when you go to install them also. So if you look at this top one, the top one has a little dot right next to the cut or the break in it. And that little dot is going to face up. Now, you don't want to force these piston rings on the piston. What you're going to want to do is get one of these ring separators and push it over the top of the piston. Otherwise, you could actually damage the piston ring itself. And then when you go to throw them on, there's going to be a certain way these grooves all have to line up so that the oil passes the right way. I just sped through it here because it may be different for your motor. So after I got them all assembled, I took this can, and it's full of oil, not chem dip, even though it says chem dip on it. It is full of oil, so I'm just getting the piston nice and oiled and all the rings nice and oiled so that when I go to put it back into the motor, there's no issues with it sliding in or scratching it. At this point in the video, I already had honed the block For whatever reason, I didn't record it. I also checked the piston ring gap inside each cylinder, and I believe they were at 10 thousandths, and that was what the book requested or required. So there was no reason for me to cut the rings down. So before you go to put the ring compressor on, just make sure that all your rings are where they need to be orientation wise. And I like to just cover the rings themselves. I don't want to go too far down with this, and make sure this is nice and oiled too, so it'll slide out easy. Make sure that you keep the piston orientated and use that notch to face it towards the front. When you're going to install these pistons, you're going to want to take the end cap off and put rubber hoses or something on there, because you don't want this getting sent down there and hitting the camshaft or the crankshaft or nicking the side of the cylinder. So what I'm going to do here is put a little bit of oil on a towel or a rag, wipe it in there, get it all nice and lubed up good. So the wetter you put this in with oil, the easier it's more than likely going to be to go in. You just set it down until it gets to right about where it's going to hit the bottom of the compressor. Then if you can, push it in by hand, and then once you push it to the point where it won't go in any farther, you're going to have to tap it in. I usually just use the end of a hammer, something really light. You're not going to be beating it in there, you're just tapping it in there. So once you roll it over, you're going to want to take them hoses off, get that end cap, get it all nice and lubed up with assembly lube. Make sure your orientation is the right way on it. Torque it down, and it's off to the next one. So lucky for me, the day that I went to do this, my dad decided to come over and give me a hand. As I was putting the rings on the pistons, he was actually tightening and torquing them down as we slid them in there. So it kind of went a lot faster than if I would have just been doing it by myself. These are lifters. I have them soaking in engine oil before we put them in. Little did I know that I guess I was supposed to keep track of where they came out of, but I guess we'll see if it makes that much of a difference or not, because I didn't. The only thing I actually kept track of was the push rods. So going to do the gaskets here, we just did some Felpro gaskets. I just ended up ordering a whole Felpro gasket set, so that's what I ended up using the whole thing here. Again, luckily I have my dad here because he was able to help me get it cleaned up and get them on there. Torqued them all down, did them in the right spec and in order. So the whole engine was rebuilt using this Chilton book, and it said to make sure that you dip the head bolts in oil before you put them in. I don't remember ever doing that in the past, but we did it today and it went in just the same. So on the top half of the engine, you're supposed to keep the push rods, the lifters and stuff all in order. Unfortunately, the push rods are the only thing that I kept in the proper spot. So hopefully we don't have any issues. I don't know if I've ever ran into that in the past, but I guess it's possible. All the rocker arms and bolts are all been cleaned up the same inside that chem dip as well. So here everything's all cleaned up. We have the wind tray keeping the lifters in. All the push rods are just kind of hand tight now. You can still roll them. Next, what we're going to do is go and install the timing chain in gears. Okay, so when these line up, these two little dots are going to be facing each other. The gears don't actually roll on each other. There's a chain. There are sets that have like maybe 2 little gears that go in between and make it all geared, but this one we just went with the original factory one. So more or less what you wanted to do is make sure your engine's at top dead center, put that gear on. I guess it doesn't necessarily even have to be at top dead center, it just makes everything a lot easier. And the way you know it's at top dead center is when you go to slide that gear on, it'll be facing up. That little dot. The camshaft also has a little pin to keep everything in the proper line. These bolts are Torex and you're going to want to torque these down. So getting the timing chain cover, I didn't want to get a chrome one because you hardly can see it once the water pump and everything's installed. So I just reused the factory one, took a screwdriver, bent it up out of the way. I didn't really get it on camera either, and then popped it out. On install, I just used 2 blocks of wood, sandwiched it together, and was able to put it back in. So on the timing chain gasket, I just used Indian head shellac, or this is lion head shellac, put it on there, makes it get a nice good seal. At the bottom where the gasket ends and the oil pan and the block all meet, you're going to want to put a little silicone there, so make sure that the oil pan seals, this seals, and the engine seals. Take your bolts and then torque them down the spec. Now I'm just going to go through and make sure that all the push rods can still just rotate on my fingertips. I'll rotate the engine over, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and every time I just keep on testing them, make sure that none of them are loose. And that should just get me in the ballpark of where the valves need to be. I can always check them later once the engine's running. It's easier to do it then. I just wanted to show you what it's like doing this in Central Florida. It is hot as hell this summer, and you can see this very easily. Thanks for tuning in and watching the video. Next video, we're going to actually put it together. I got to do a header modification. We're going to Cerakote some headers, and we're going to get it running for the first time. So hit that subscribe, and until next time,